Imagine a village so small, so quiet, that its people don't tell time by clocks, they tell it by trains. A whistle at dawn means it's time to pray. A whistle at dusk means it's time to eat. For generations, that sound has meant one thing: the world is still turning exactly as it should. And then, one day, the train comes and it doesn't stop making sound. It doesn't stop at all. And when it finally does, it isn't carrying passengers, it's carrying the dead. This is the world of Train to Pakistan, Khushwant Singh's unflinching 1956 novel about the single bloodiest chapter in South Asian history, told not through the eyes of generals or politicians, but through one small village that had, until that morning, no interest in hatred at all. To understand this novel, you have to understand the moment it comes from. In 1947, British colonial rule over India ended, and in its place, two new nations were born, India and Pakistan, split largely along religious lines. It was meant to be an orderly transition. It became one of the largest forced migrations in human history, and one of the bloodiest. Millions of Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs crossed borders in a matter of weeks, and hundreds of thousands never made it across at all. Khushwant Singh lived through this. He was a lawyer and later a journalist who watched Partition dismantle the country he knew, and he made a decision that would define his literary legacy. He would not write about Partition through the language of politics or nationalism. He would write about it through the eyes of ordinary villagers, people who had no stake in the ideology, only in their neighbours, their land, and their daily lives. That decision is what makes Train to Pakistan endure. The novel is set in a fictional village called Mano Majra, perched on the banks of the Sutlej River, right along the new and still forming border. Before the violence arrives, Singh spends real, patient time simply showing us how this place lives. Sikhs, Muslims, and a handful of Hindu families have shared this land for generations. Their festivals overlap. Their friendships run deep. Their economic lives are intertwined. This is not incidental. It's the entire foundation of the novel's tragedy. Singh wants you to feel, viscerally, that these are not abstract communities who were destined to turn on each other. They are neighbours. They are, in many cases, family by long custom, if not by blood. And running through all of it, like a heartbeat, is the railway line. The same trains that mark the hours of the day, the same tracks that will soon carry unimaginable horror straight into this peaceful village's heart. Singh builds his story around a handful of unforgettable characters. There's Jugat Singh, known to everyone as Juga, the village's resident troublemaker, a man with a criminal reputation but a code of his own. He's fallen in love with Nooran, a young Muslim woman, in a relationship that quietly defies the very religious boundaries about to become lethal. There's Iqbal, an educated, city-bred social worker who arrives in the village carrying vague political ideals but very little practical courage. He talks about justice in sweeping terms, but when the moment comes to act, Singh forces us to ask whether his ideals mean anything at all. And there's Hukum Chand, the local magistrate, a man caught between his duty to prevent bloodshed and his own private compromises, trying to hold together a peace that is already crumbling beneath him. Through these three men, Singh sets up his central tension: the criminal with a conscience, the intellectual without one, and the official who can see the disaster coming but cannot quite stop it. The plot ignites with something almost mundane by comparison to what follows. A local moneylender is murdered. Suspicion immediately falls on Juga, partly because of his reputation, partly because he was out that very night secretly meeting Nooran. Iqbal, too, is swept up and arrested. His outsider status and his vague political affiliations make him an easy target for local authorities looking for someone to blame. For a moment, the novel almost feels like a small-town mystery. That's deliberate. Singh is letting us settle into a scale of conflict we can understand. A personal crime, a personal suspicion, right before he detonates something far larger underneath it. And then it happens. A train arrives from across the newly drawn border, silent, without the usual noise of passengers, without the usual rhythm of arrival. When it's finally opened, it's found to be carrying the bodies of Sikhs and Hindus massacred on the other side. This is the hinge on which the entire novel turns. The train, the very symbol of order, routine, and daily life, becomes, in a single moment, a vessel of horror. Singh doesn't dwell on gratuitous detail. He doesn't need to. The horror is in the silence, in the shift it causes in the village itself. Suspicion floods in where trust used to live. The murder investigation, the small personal dramas, all of it is suddenly dwarfed by something the village cannot ignore any longer. The violence of partition has arrived at their own doorstep. In the aftermath, outside agitators arrive in Mano Majra, pushing the Sikh villagers to retaliate against their own Muslim neighbours, the very people they've lived beside for generations. The local Muslim families are evacuated for their own safety, set to be transported to Pakistan by train. And then comes the novel's darkest turn. A plan is formed to ambush that very train and kill everyone aboard it, including Nuran. This is where Singh's real question comes into focus. Not who is right and who is wrong in some grand historical sense, but something smaller and somehow harder. When the machinery of collective hatred is bearing down on you, does an individual conscience still count for anything at all? Jugger, the supposed criminal, the man everyone had already judged, is the one who ultimately acts. Without giving away the exact mechanics of the ending for those who haven't read it yet, it's enough to say this. His choice is the moral center of the entire novel. Not Iqbal's education, not Hukum Chand's official authority. A single, costly, deeply personal act of courage from the character everyone had written off. Singh refuses to give us a clean, comforting resolution. There's no grand system fixed, no wave of reconciliation sweeping the region. What we're left with is smaller and, in some ways, more honest. Proof that even amid mass ideological violence, individual love and individual courage can still change what happens to the people standing right in front of you. That's why, nearly 70 years later, Train to Pakistan still gets read, still gets taught, and still gets talked about. Not because it explains partition, no single book could, but because it refuses to let us reduce it to numbers. It insists, until its final page, that history happens to people. One village, one train, one choice at a time. If you enjoyed this journey through Train to Pakistan, I'd be truly grateful if you'd hit like and subscribe. It helps me keep bringing these stories to life, one book at a time. And if there's a novel you'd love to see covered next, drop it in the comments.